Right. Good morning. Good morning, Lynn. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's well. Hope you all enjoyed the march at the weekend if you attended or if you was watching. Today should be very interesting, shouldn't it? For Prime Minister's questions. Obviously, he hasn't resigned yet. Nicola, yes, indeed. This should be spicy one, I hope. Don't forget, if you can, hit that like button. Please share this out. Yeah, please share this out. That'll be I'll be very grateful for that. Just share a link on your Facebook, on your X, or wherever. I'll be much appreciated, people. We're just waiting for them to start, so give us another couple of minutes and we'll get going. Not that I know of. Not that I know of, Nicola. Right, let me share this out as well. Again, because people do forget. This out as well. So bear with me a minute and we will be going over to them soon. Don't forget, tomorrow we got Sadiq Khan from about 10:15 in the morning, okay? Well, it doesn't surprise me, Nicola, that because he's been leaking very damning against Starmer and he lied to Parliament. Well, yeah, that doesn't surprise me one bit, to be honest. Okay, let's make this best as we can for you guys. Just give me a second. I see Piers Morgan had a few things to say the other day, didn't he? Who's a Piers Morgan fan? We're just waiting for them to start, so bear with us a minute. Cheeky Sprite, good morning, Lady Cats. Like I say, this should be an interesting one, I hope. We all hope, don't we? Thank you, Nicola. Cheers. Thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. Becky just arrived. You're ready now. God, it's all right for someone who can afford to have breakfast. I'm waiting for lunch. Well, thank you. Welcome all. Hope everyone's well. As soon as we get the go ahead, Shaz in the house. Good afternoon. Well, morning still, just. Good God, God. We're just waiting for them. As soon as it starts, we go over, okay? And I will shut up. Because you don't want to hear me. Dreaded encounters, welcome along. I'm putting hours on the day. Yeah, you're wishing your life away, Shaz. I should have got myself a coffee before I started this, shouldn't I? But once it gets going, I'll get one. Don't forget, if you can share this out, please, guys. That'd be much appreciated. Let's get as many people as we can watching. All right, here we go, here we go, here we go. All right, I'll shut up. Catch you in a bit.
I remind members the Private Members Bill ballot book is open today in the no lobby until 6 p.m. It will be taken in the public bill office and remain open for signatures until rise the House. The ballot draw will be held at 9 a.m. tomorrow in Committee Room 16. We now come to questions. Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question number 1.
Secretary of State.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I will take questions 1 and 10 together. Ensuring children have healthy and safe lives online is one of my top priorities. From making self-harm, suicide and cyber-flashing priority offences under the Online Safety Act, to banning nudification apps and standing up to Grok and X, I will leave no stone unturned to ensure children are protected. Our consultation on growing up online closes next Tuesday, so there is still time to respond. I'll set forward proposals before the
Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Many of my West and Bartonshire constituents are rightly worried about the harms children face online, including exposure to self-harm content, online bullying and addictive platform design. Can the Minister reassure the House that the Government's consultation on banning social media for under-16s will result in decisive action and ensure that any measures introduced are effective, proportionate and capable of keeping pace with rapidly changing technology?
Yes, that is absolutely my objective, and our consultation, just to remind the House, is not just looking at whether there should be a ban on social media for under-16s, but a whole range of other issues too, whether platforms should be required to switch off addictive features, whether there should be mandatory overnight curfews, whether there should be age or other restrictions on AI chatbots, how age verification should be strengthened, and how to help children and parents navigate the online world and thrive. We are determined to act, and we will be prepared to act on all of those issues.
Michelle Welch.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Too often children are exposed to harmful content online, with material promoting pornography and self-harm pushed towards them. Childhood should not be handed over to algorithms. As a mum, I know parents are terrified that social media companies are putting profit before protection. Does the Minister agree with me that not only should social media platforms step up, but it's now time to legislate to ensure social media companies take active steps to protect our children online?
Yes, I do, and we have legislated and we are prepared to go further. My honourable friend will know I have already made strangulation and suffocation in porn a priority offence under the Online Safety Act. We're determined to ensure rules about what happens online, pornography online, are the same as what happens offline, and we're coming forward with proposals on that. I think it is something that deeply worries parents across the country. The question isn't whether we act, but how, and I'm determined to use all possible levers to protect children online.
John.
Mr Speaker, big tech is a force for good, but so often it's being used for bad. But isn't there a fundamental conflict of interest with this government, and indeed even with the previous government, that big tech companies are so embedded in government departments, so embedded in agencies, that government is not prepared to take the tough action necessary to protect children and the most vulnerable. Is it not the case we're now in a situation of big tech not paying taxes to this country, avoiding substantive regulation, and have got themselves in a position where the government believes big tech is too big to fail?
Yes.
Not for the first time and not for the last time, the honourable gentleman raises an extremely important issue. And he may not be aware that I have recently shown we will take a decisive move to backing more British tech companies because we believe as AI and tech becomes the engine of economic power and of hard power, we need more sovereign control. I think there are many wonderful examples of technology provided by big tech companies. I've seen it in my own constituency through things like AI tutors to help poor kids catch up. But we want to make sure the benefits of technology are felt by everybody in this country, not just a powerful few, and that we shape this powerful technology to work for all. And I would just say to him, watch this space, because there'll be more to come.
Monica Harding.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. New polling commissioned by the Online Safety Act Network shows that almost 80% of the public want comprehensive laws to regulate social media platforms, because otherwise they will continue to prioritise their business interests over user safety. The government has been weak on this, has no new online safety legislation in the King's Speech. So will the Secretary of State at least move quickly to adopt the network's Safety by Design Code to deliver the kind of comprehensive reforms that the public want?
I would remind the Honourable Lady, I have already required chatbots to protect users in the law from illegal content. I ban nudification apps with a new criminal offence. We're requiring platforms to take down non-consensual intimate images within 48 hours. And we're requiring platforms to act faster on all of these things. It is not true that we haven't legislated to go further to protect children online. Is she right to say there's more to do? Absolutely. And we are and we will act.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Chiamora.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the original sin underpinning much of today's digital harms is engagement-driven digital advertising. That is what incentivises the platforms to hook young people on infinite scrolling, as members of FlipGen explained to me when I met them on Monday. It's also what drives the London is broken misinformation that Sadiq Khan highlighted, and what rewards the fabricated clickbait AI Auschwitz images called out by the Auschwitz Museum. So will the Secretary of State take steps to regulate digital advertising as we call for in our report published almost a year ago?
You know, my honourable friend is right, you know, follow the money. And I am highly aware of that, and we are determined to act. My right honourable friend, the member for Edinburgh South, is actually chairing the Digital Advertising Task Force, which is a joint effort between DCMS and DCIT to look at precisely these issues, because we want to make sure that illegal and harmful content isn't rewarded.
Carl Lockhart.
Mr. Speaker, when a child views an inappropriate image online, they can't unsee it. I have been horrified recently with the number of parents coming to me about inappropriate ads popping up on kids' digital games. Would the Minister agree to meet with me? Some of these images are absolutely horrendous and children are viewing them at a very early age. Would the Minister meet with me to discuss this ongoing issue?
I or one of my ministers will absolutely meet with her. She is right to say once you've seen something you can't unsee it, and I think especially for young minds, we all know how young children will remember it and maybe wake up in the night and talk to you about things that they have seen that they don't understand and they're too young to see. So I'm more than happy for myself or my ministers to meet with her, see those images for ourselves and speak to Ofcom and others about what we can do to try and stop this.
Shadow Minister Dr Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, does she regret having been forced into a ban on social media for under-16s in the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Act and not committing to it in the first place or introducing a bill in the King's Speech?
No.
Charlie Joest.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker. Convow, Mr Cloward. Decent ministers regularly meet representatives from science and technology communities. The UK has seized the moment in AI, in quantum, in semiconductors. We will keep building British sovereign strength and alongside it work with allies across the European Union.
Charlie Joyce.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Now, European tech leaders and some member states are concerned that the EU's approach to digital regulation is strangling their ability to compete. So will the Secretary of State or the Minister rule out binding the UK tech industry to a legal framework that could stifle growth in this vital area of the economy?
Well, the feedback from UK tech businesses has been clear. Britain has now got the highest share of venture investment in Europe for 16 years. We have now got IT and technology driving productivity upwards alongside capital from the British Business Bank and Sovereign AI. Of course, we will work on redoing the work of the botched Brexit deal, but alongside that, we will maintain British sovereign strength in technology and AI.
Number 3, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This Labour government is the first in a decade to publish a digital inclusion action plan to ensure everybody benefits from our digital society. Of the 11.9 million Digital Inclusion Innovation Fund, 73% supported charities, many of them grassroots organisations. Through Digital ID, work that I lead on, we are supporting digital inclusion and engaging expert grassroots organisations directly to help ensure that we get this right and that they are included.
Josh Bubble.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. NHS Sussex found that Eastbourne, despite being the sunniest town in the UK, is one of the most digitally excluded patches of Sussex. There are great organisations like Tech Resort, run by Liz Crew and Will Callaghan, doing work to help bridge the digital divide. However, they will be scuppered by the closing of the Digital Inclusion Innovation Fund, whose last grants expired last month. So will the Minister commit to reviewing whether that fund will be reopened and set out a timeline for that so that Tech Resort can benefit? The honourable gentleman raises a very important point, and I know he has excellent record in this area. The Digital Inclusion Fund was designed for a one-year programme to understand what works in digital inclusion. I share the members' concerns, and we remain committed to building a digitally inclusive society, including our public services, which we are making more personalised, joining up and digital, so that everybody is included and benefits from them, as we all expect our public services to be as adequate and as inclusive as they can be.
Brad Thomas.
Question 4, Mr Speaker.
Sarah Sturt.
Making it as simple as possible for parents and children to get involved in our consultation is really important to me personally, because I know this is an issue so many families grapple with every single day. We've got dedicated surveys for parents and young people. Almost 38,000 parents and 12,700 young people have completed the surveys so far, alongside all the events I and my ministers have taken part in. But there is still a week to go, so anybody who watches DSIT questions, please get involved, answer, because we want to know what you think. We want your views, because we've got to get this right.
Fred Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I speak to parents in Plymouth about this topic regularly. 92% of parents are concerned about the impact of social media, but many just don't have time to complete a lengthy consultation. I'm also noting concerns raised about the framing of some of the questions in the consultation, including prompts to consider the benefits of social media, the absence of any clear mechanism to consider evidence from medical experts and frontline professionals, separately to submissions from tech companies, who obviously have a commercial interest in opposing any potential restrictions, and also the use of AI to analyse responses. So can the Secretary of State confirm that these concerns will be taken into account when assessing the consultation results, and reiterate her commitment to taking bold and decisive action this summer?
Let me just reassure him on some of those points. We have had 38,000 parents respond to the surveys, which I think is good, but there's more to be done there. In terms of medical professionals, we've had a response from the Royal College of Psychiatrists, multiple individual medical doctors, health professionals for safer screens, and local providers like Cardiff Children's Services. And we also have an expert panel that includes, that is chaired by the eminent paediatrician Professor Russell Viner, and also many psychologists and psychiatrists on that. We are actively seeking views of medical professionals and parents. There's still a week to go. many honourable members have actually fed in individual views from their constituencies, and I'd encourage everybody to do so in the remaining 6 days.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. A considerable number of parents in my constituency of Edinburgh West have written to me concerned about the children's safety and the online dangers. They welcome the government's consultation, but they are concerned about the timing. They would like some reassurances about how quickly it will be dealt with, and if the Minister has any advice for them at time being and how they can help the children deal with the threat.
Come forward with proposals before the summer. We've already taken powers in the Children's Act to implement the results of that consultation, which I intend to do by the end of the year. In the meanwhile, we aren't waiting. I've taken a number of steps to amend various acts to give greater protection, and also produced a really brilliant set of advice for parents. You don't know until you ask about how to talk to kids about social media at different ages. It's available free online, and I have personally found it very helpful.
Bob Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Well, there are three particular things this government is doing to make sure artificial intelligence is developed responsibly and developed here. 1, build deep capability in government with the AI Security Institute. 2, to develop a wider AI assurance sector so that Britain is at the frontier in that context as well. And 3, robust regulation at the point of use.
Bob Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the growing warnings from leading scientists, industry figures and Nobel laureates that advanced AI systems could pose existential risks on a par with nuclear or biological threats, does the Secretary of State agree with me that the current reliance on voluntary commitments through the AI Security Institute is insufficient, and will she outline what concrete steps the government will now take to move beyond non-binding agreements and to introduce enforceable, internationally agreed standards?
Point out to the honourable member that there are a series of regulations at the point of use that apply to AI algorithms and systems as well. Second, that we have taken powers in the Crime and Policing Act to allow us to bring unregulated chatbots into the scope of that Act and its requirements on illegal content. And third, through the AI Security Institute, Britain has been at the frontier internationally on both thinking about policies and thinking about the best ways of developing our capability, a cross of both mandatory regulatory contexts that I've just mentioned and, of course, some voluntary requirements on top of that too.
Mr. Speaker, AC's pre-release analysis of AI models did not prevent the production by Grok of over 3 million sexualised images. Even Steve Bannon, of all people, is now calling for mandatory pre-release vetting of AI models. So can I ask if the time has come for the UK to review our voluntary approach?
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for having raised this topic with deep expertise as well. On the particular question of Grok, she'll be very aware that the regulatory and legal context made a number of those instances illegal. We will continue to enforce very robust law on those questions and, of course, develop our ongoing conversations on further policy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the rapid advances we are seeing recently from frontier AI models in areas such as identifying software vulnerabilities and rapid testing for those vulnerabilities in a very sophisticated way, what engagement is the government having with those frontier companies, particularly in relation to Anthropic? And is the government considering making changes to the carried-over cybersecurity bill to address these very, very real vulnerabilities?
Well, on the question of engagement, can I first point out and pay tribute to the AI Security Institute, one of the only labs in the world which had engaged with all the frontier companies prior to deployment of models, in this case with Anthropic's Mythos model as well. On the broader question of the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, a major reason for bringing data centres in scope in the way that we have done is to appreciate the particular cyber risks applying to them. We will continue to keep that under review.
Emily Darling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the best ways to make sure that AI is developed, both contributing to innovation and to growth, is to set very high standards. We are lucky to have the British Standards Institute, the oldest standards institute in the world, and I'm very lucky that they are based in Milton Keynes. Will he join me in wishing them a huge happy birthday on this momentous year for them, but also can he say what kind of engagement he's had on their work to set high, reassuring standards for AI's development?
Well, My honourable friend has been a remarkable champion for the BSI, and I know this on this and wider questions as well. I won't sing happy birthday, but I will certainly wish them a very happy birthday and look forward to continuing my conversations with them.
Tory College Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Working across departments and with my technology counterpart in the Lords, we've published a comprehensive paper on how Britain can thrive in the age of AI, calling for a digital sovereign strategy and an integrated approach to AI that is bold and responsible, pro-innovation, pro-trust, and built alongside industry and civic expertise I'd be happy to discuss. What we see is Britain has a leading place in AI services, but we've squandered leads before, and the government hasn't offered a coherent joint-up strategy to do this differently, centred on trust and standards. So I ask, where is the government's AI bill, and can we have guarantees that the Labour's latest internal drama will not cost Britain its most important economic opportunity in a generation?
Well, can I just gently point to the Honourable Lady that there is a very clear strategy we set out early on, the AI Opportunities Action Plan. We have then built in public. It is a public dashboard. You can follow progress right across the country, 75% of it delivered. And just this week we found out that IT and AI have driven productivity revivals for this country as well. We're firing on all cylinders when it comes to UK AI.
We now come to Topical Clevedowns.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, if I can briefly say, this government believes Britain's national interests are strengthened, not diminished, when we work with like-minded countries. That's why next week I'll be joining other G7 nations coming together as democracies to discuss how we shape tech and AI to work for all, and why I'll be proud to showcase the best of Britain's AI strengths on the world stage at London Tech Week in June.
Clive Jones.
Life science companies like Becton Dickinson in my constituency of Wokingham play a key role in advancing the research and innovation that will help deliver the National Cancer Plan and transform cancer care. So what is the Minister doing to increase funding to research and development for life science companies like those in my constituency?
I know the Honourable Gentleman is a powerful advocate of life sciences nationally and in his constituency. We see them as one of our greatest national assets, not only helping to save lives but drive jobs, growth and innovation. I'm very proud that this government has put in the largest ever investment into research and development, including into life sciences, and that we are investing £730,000 supporting 7 projects in Wokingham, because we know that's good for his constituents and the country.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if I've ever told you, Mr. Speaker, but Harlow is the birthplace of the fibre optic cable. I want children in Harlow to feel confident they can get the brilliant jobs of the future that tech can provide them. So can I ask the Secretary of State what she's going to do to make sure that happens?
We want to ensure people from all walks of life and in every part of the country can seize the opportunities that tech and AI bring. That is why we are upskilling 10 million workers, a third of the workforce, in AI skills, why we're investing £170 million in the Tech First programme to help young people get skills and training, and why we've launched the first ever Level 4 apprenticeship in AI, so young people in Harlow can fulfil their ambitions, and so we build a better country for all.
Secretary of State Julie Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was born in Harlow, would you believe? Can the Secretary of State guarantee that under Labour's EU reset, Britain will not align with any EU tech rules, including the AI Act?
This government wants to ensure we have a closer relationship for Europe, because we see every day the terrible impacts that their Brexit deal brings. But I am also clear that we will continue our pragmatic, not dogmatic approach to regulation, because Britain is the second country in the Western world for AI, and we want to retain those benefits to grow the economy and create good jobs throughout the country.
Julie Lopez.
Mr. Speaker, there was absolutely no clear answer from the Secretary of State there, so I think it sounds like Labour is about to trade away our Brexit freedoms on tech regulation. And yet tech ministers have been briefing behind the scenes that we must not lose Britain's Brexit freedoms on tech when it comes to AI, data, agri-tech. So will she now publicly admit what her ministers have been briefing behind those closed doors? Brexit was not some exercise in nostalgia pushed on us by uninformed thickos. It's given Britain a competitive advantage in the industries of the future.
I mean, perhaps unusually, I don't listen to and never get involved in briefings, but I am very clear about the huge advantages this country has. World-leading talent, some of the most innovative tech startups. In the last year alone, we got more VC funding for tech and AI in this country than France, Germany, combined. We are going to back Britain because we believe in Britain. £500 million in a sovereign AI fund. 4 AI growth zones in parts of the country that have been levelled up more under this government than under 14 years under members opposite. We are going to seize this powerful technology to build a future that works for all, and I am very proud of our work.
Sarah Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Debbie Duncan set up a petition calling on the government to tackle tragedy trolling, which has attracted over 18,000 signatures. Does the Minister agree with me that it is time for action, and will he or she support a debate to help take this forward?
We are absolutely focused on precisely those features that so many parents are worried about. Children doom scrolling, the fact that they are on their phones overnight and the impact that that can have on their anxiety, mental health and sleep. The question isn't whether we will act, we will. We will put forward our proposals by the summer, and I intend to legislate, if required, by the end of the year.
We now come to Prime Minister's questions. We start with Keir Sullivan.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you. May I extend my deepest condolences, and I'm sure the condolences of the House, to the family and colleagues of Lance Bombardier Keir Sullivan, who lost her life in a tragic incident on Friday. She was an exceptional soldier and will be deeply missed. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to comment on one of Manchester's great heroes, moving on after almost a decade. So let me congratulate Pep Guardiola on all his success at Manchester City. And, Mr. Speaker, if I could declare an interest, I'd also like to say congratulations to Arsenal Football Club on becoming the Premier League champions. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I share the condolences expressed by the Prime Minister. From the Russian invasion of Ukraine to the Iran war, people have struggled with the cost of living. In my constituency of Bathgate and Linlithgow, in the heart of Scotland, road travel and logistics are key to everyday life and local industry, with the Road Haulage Association headquartered in Bathgate. What reassurance can the Prime Minister offer my constituents that this government will tackle household bills and business cost pressures?
Well, families across the United Kingdom are facing impacts of a war that we did not choose. So it's welcome news today that inflation is falling. Mr. Speaker, there is more that we can do, and I can announce today that we're giving our hauliers a 12-month road tax holiday, helping to keep prices down. And we're backing drivers by extending the freeze in fuel duty for the rest of the year. This is possible because of the decisions taken by the Chancellor, making us the fastest-growing economy in the G7, and she will set out further action tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, this is not our war, but while the parties opposite wanted to jump into it, Labour will always protect working people.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Beno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to associate myself with the words of the Prime Minister regarding the tragic death of Lance Bombardier Keir Sullivan. We send our condolences to her family for this terrible loss. I welcome some of what the Prime Minister has said on fuel duty. Yes, it's still a freeze, but we asked him about this on the 11th of March and the 25th of March, and he said he wasn't going to do it. So thank you for the U-turn. Thank you for the U-turn. MPs are shaking their heads. It would make more sense if they just did what we were doing, because they get there in the end anyway. But, Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Labour MPs voted to ban new British oil and gas licences. Why?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in relation to fuel duty, under the plans that we inherited, fuel duty was due to go up by 5% in April. We stopped that, and they voted against it. We're now extending the freeze because of events in the Middle East. And I know the Leader of the Opposition likes to claim responsibility for things that have got literally nothing to do with her. In her mind, she won Eurovision on Saturday and scored the winning goal in the FA Cup final. But she's never takes any responsibility for what they did for 14 long years. Mr. Speaker, in relation to oil and gas is coming out of the North Sea 24/7. It will play an important role for many years to come. We're supporting existing oil and gas fields throughout their lifespan. We made changes, actually, in November to allow neighbouring fields to be exploited. But families across the UK are fed up with their bills going up and down because of global conflict. The only way to take control is through renewables. Mr. Speaker, we've now consented renewables to power 23 million households. The Leader of the Opposition wants to stick with the old Tory energy policy, which is leaving households exposed to higher bills year after year.
Mr. Speaker, what's causing problems for British consumers is the high energy prices, which are caused by his policies. I asked him why they voted for this. He had no answer. So let me make clear what is going on. We are losing 1,000 jobs a month in oil and gas. I asked him about new licences, not about existing drilling. And then, late last night, Mr. Speaker, the government snuck out an announcement that it was removing sanctions on Russian oil. So can the Prime Minister explain why oil from Russia is acceptable, but oil from Aberdeen is not?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me address the sanctions head-on, because we have been united across this House on these issues since the beginning of the conflict. What we announced yesterday was a strong new package of new sanctions, going well beyond existing sanctions. So it's a new package. This includes new bans on maritime services on LNG and new bans on refined oil products from Russia. We also issued 2 targeted short-term licences to phase the new sanctions in and to protect UK consumers. Mr. Speaker, that is standard practice. This government has phased in sanctions in this way before, and the last government used exactly the same technique when they introduced sanctions. And when they did so, Mr. Speaker, we supported them because we could see the sanctions were the right thing to do to bear down on Russia. So these are new sanctions being phased in. This is not a question of lifting existing sanctions in any way whatsoever, and we will continue to work with our allies on further sanction packages.
It's a very weak set of cheers from the MPs who are trying to get rid of him, could I just say. Mr. Speaker, he doesn't know what he is talking about. This level of processology is not going to get him out of these difficult answers, OK? Let me tell him what is going on. Labour are giving money to Russia, Reform are taking money from Russia. There's only one party that is standing up to Russia, and that is the Conservative Party. I cannot believe that he's actually saying that he's doing something good on the war in Ukraine. What's he talking about? This morning, Ukraine's sanction chief disagrees with what the Prime Minister's approach is. That's what Ukraine is saying. In March, when the United States eased sanctions on Russia, the Prime Minister said all partners should maintain pressure on Russia and its war chest. The Prime Minister said our sanctions remain, and there is no question about that. What's changed?
I really think on an issue of this importance, which is about further sanctions on Russia in relation to Ukraine, it is really important that the position is not misrepresented.
Exactly.
This is a new package of sanctions. None of the existing sanctions are being lifted in any way. So this is not less pressure on Russia, it is more pressure on Russia. More pressure than there was the day before yesterday, more pressure than there was under the last government. What is happening is that those sanctions are being phased in a way which was used by the last government when they introduced new sanctions. We bothered to do the processology and work out what we were doing and supported it because we could see that it put more pressure on Russia. Similar methods are used by other countries. They are done because of the impact on the market and to protect UK consumers. These are new sanctions putting more pressure on Russia, and I think if she'd done her homework, she'd actually support us on this.
Mr. Speaker, being patronising is not a substitute for understanding policy. And I've heard this term. Mr. Speaker, I've heard this tone before. This is the same tone he used during the Mandelson scandal, and they were all cheering, and then it turned out that he was wrong, wrong, wrong. He says that other countries are doing this. The EU is not doing this. Let me make it clear. I know it hurts him to hear it. He is now choosing to buy dirty Russian oil. That money will be used to fund the killing of Ukrainian soldiers. Isn't he ashamed?
I really think that to misunderstand and misrepresent what is happening, this is a very serious issue where we're working with others. These are new bans, they're new sanctions, they're new bans on maritime services on LNG as of yesterday. They're new bans on refined oil products from Russia as of yesterday. They are being phased in the same way that previous sanctions regimes have been phased in, exactly in the way the last government did and we have done. Other countries do exactly the same. The EU has its own way of doing it. Australia and Canada have their own way of doing it. And to play party politics on Ukraine, where we have stood firm, and the only people that benefit when we play party politics in here on Russia and Ukraine is Putin.
Mr. Speaker, that pompous tone does not cover for the fact that he has got his policy all wrong. I have asked him about oil and gas again and again and again. The last time he told me that it was the Energy Secretary's job and it had nothing to do with him. That's what's destroying this country. It's not playing politics. It's speaking up for the people who are out there. The fact is, more people are buying Russian oil because British oil isn't being drilled. He's sanctioning British oil, but not Russian oil. And he should be ashamed, Mr. Speaker. He should be ashamed. I cannot believe that this Prime Minister, even when he has nothing to lose, continues to defend banning new British oil and gas licences. In April, Britain saw the single biggest drop in employment ever since the pandemic. That's under them. 210,000 people have lost their jobs in the last year. What he is doing is going to cost thousands more people their jobs, especially in cities like Aberdeen, which rely on oil and gas. So can he tell us, why is he doing everything to save his job and doing nothing to save other people's jobs?
Mr. Speaker, there is drilling in the North Sea, and on her, she said there's no drilling in the North Sea. She said, "Going to have to refer herself to the Privileges Committee, Mr. Speaker." There is drilling. It's 24/7, and oil and gas are coming out, and that will be important for many, many years to come. We are supporting those existing oil and gas fields throughout their lifespan. We made changes in November to allow neighbouring fields to be exploited. But it is because we are on the international market that our prices of businesses and households go up every time there's an international conflict. We saw it with Ukraine, or we saw it with Iran, and people are fed up with a government, the last government, that didn't take control of their bills. We're taking control of their bills. The way to do that is through renewables, and that's what we're doing.
Mr. Speaker, it gets worse and worse. He doesn't understand the policy. I am asking him about new oil and gas licences, which they voted against yesterday. If they had approved those licences for Jackdaw and Rosebank like we did, we would have that oil in this country now. We would. And just listen to him, and I wonder if he is okay. He is so deep in the bunker, Mr. Speaker. He's importing sanctioned Russian oil. He's nationalising steel. He's imposing price controls in the supermarket. It's like the Soviets won. This country needs a government that has got its act together, Mr. Speaker. Instead, what we have is a Prime Minister hanging by a thread, fake support from his backbenchers, too scared to take difficult decisions, losing his moral compass by backsliding on Ukraine. Yes, he is. Mr. Speaker, look, the shakes of their head are so feeble. It's so feeble. He has got... They can... It's absolutely laughable, Mr. Speaker. It's absolutely laughable. Yesterday, we saw them huddled in the corridors talking about Andy Burnham and West Streeting. The fact is, he's got a cabinet fighting to replace him, and the worst part is, they aren't getting rid of him over his terrible agenda. No, they actually like it. They just want a better salesman. So isn't it the case, Mr. Speaker, that it doesn't matter who replaces him, the real problem is the Labour Party?
Mr. Speaker,
I think not, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, look, a lot's been happening in recent days, so she may have overlooked the fact that last week the ONS announced we've got the fastest growing economy in the G7. Last week we had the biggest fall in NHS waiting lists for 17 years. Today inflation's come down more than expected. And, Mr. Speaker, if you'd offered me that and Arsenal becoming Premier League champions, I'd take it every day of the week.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Royal Regiment of Scotland. 20 years of duty, courage, and for 23 of its soldiers, the ultimate sacrifice in service to our country. Across Scotland, more than 20 councils have already recognised their service by granting the regiment the freedom of their area, reflecting Scotland's long and proud tradition of respecting our armed forces. Earlier this month, however, Glasgow SNP and Green councillors rejected Labour's motion to grant the Royal Regiment freedom of the city. It is a shameful snub to our servicemen and women, and a decision that has left many Glaswegians feeling ashamed and embarrassed. Does the Prime Minister agree that this is an insult to those who serve, and will he join me in urging Glasgow City Council to reconsider?
Can I join my honourable friend in paying tribute to the bravery and sacrifice of the Royal Regiment of Scotland? I've had the privilege of meeting Scots serving in our armed forces across the world. They deserve our deepest gratitude. I cannot understand how the SNP and Greens have arrived at this decision, particularly when Glaswegians have contributed so much to the Royal Regiment. It's not too late to do the right thing, and I'd urge them to reconsider.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in sending our condolences to the family of Lance Bombardier Keir Sullivan at the death, that tragic accident, and to all her colleagues. And I hope the Prime Minister will also join me in sending condolences to the family of Scott Hastings, the former Scottish and Lions rugby player who sadly passed away at the weekend. Mr. Speaker, in 2025, Donald Trump and Elon Musk abolished America's international aid programme. At the same time, the government made huge cuts in the UK's own programme. We now see a dangerous outbreak of Ebola in Central Africa, and many people fear it's going to spread and get much worse. Yet there are rumours across Whitehall that the Prime Minister is planning further cuts to Britain's international aid programme this year. Will he today rule that out entirely?
Mr. Speaker, he raised a very important issue in relation to Ebola and Africa, and obviously we're working at pace and with others in relation to that issue. We did take a decision in relation to aid in order to fund defence spending because we needed to increase defence spending, but we are committed to our overseas aid, and we mitigated that with some of the measures that we've put in place.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if the Prime Minister completely ruled out further cuts to the international aid programme. And with defence chiefs this week writing to the Times saying cutting aid for defence is a mistake, I hope he and his ministers will rule that out today. And if he doesn't, I hope Labour Party members will ask all the Labour leadership candidates their position on the future of Britain's aid programme. Mr. Speaker, in the past few days, two of those Labour leadership candidates, the Right Honourable Gentleman, the member for Ilford North, and the Mayor of Manchester, have ruled out any support for Britain joining the UK customs union with the EU, despite the fact that it would boost growth and help us cut the cost of living. Is the Prime Minister relieved that he has finally something that he can agree with his colleagues on?
Mr. Speaker, in the last 2 years I've been negotiating serious trade deals which are vital for our most important sectors of the economy. They're trade deals with the EU, but also with India, North Korea and the United States. And I remind him of the value of those deals. Before the deal with the United States, I went to JLR in Solihull and I talked to the workforce there. They were worried sick about their jobs and the jobs of their communities. When we agreed terms, I went back to JLR because of the deal we got with the EU, because their jobs, thousands of jobs, were safeguarded. His approach would throw all that away. He would have to go and see those workforces and tell them their jobs are gone. I'm not going to do that.
What happened?
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the steps taken to clean up British politics via the landmark elections bill, but we must go further. If I had a £5 million gift from a billionaire living halfway across the world and not come clean about what that money was for, my constituents would be furious. And if the same billionaire had then bankrolled my party to the tune of £12 million, my constituents would be knocking on my door and calling for me to resign. Does the Prime Minister agree that the elections bill must ensure that no British politician is ever for sale to the highest bidder?
I thank my honourable friend who makes a powerful case. We have already committed to a moratorium on crypto donations to political parties, and the King's Speech introduces tougher rules to protect our democracy. But the £5 million question is, why did the Reform leader keep this donation secret? I see he's not here to answer. And what did the billionaire lining his pockets ask for in return? Those questions need to be answered. That's why he's not here.
Dave Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for calling me for my first PMQ since becoming SNP Westminster leader following the SNP's stunning victory in Scotland. Can I say about how much I'm enjoying the sense of challenge and opportunity that a new job can provide, a sense of renewal I'm certain the Prime Minister will be enjoying in the weeks ahead. But we saw this week, Mr. Speaker, the latest chapter of Labour infighting, where Andy Burnham Brexit wants the UK to stay out of the EU, but Peter Mandelson's pal, the former Health Minister, wants us to go back into the EU. Can the Prime Minister advise us which of his potential successors does he agree with?
Well, can I congratulate him on his new post and thank him for the calm, reasonable approach that I've come to expect. My position is very clear. We have already negotiated a closer relationship with the EU. We did that last year. We have another negotiation and agreement this year at a summit where we'll get even closer and take a big step forward in relation to our relationship with the EU, which is in our national interest.
Chris Spence from Hollow.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the Prime Minister will be pleased to know I'm going to ask him a question about his favourite topic, which is football. There are people in this House that seek to blame the Prime Minister for everything, but I thought it was a bit rich when one national newspaper blamed the Prime Minister for Harlow Town going into administration because he once went to visit them. But as I know, Harlow Town is very much the Prime Minister's second team. He will please to be know they are now out of administration, looking forward to a strong future. Can I ask the Prime Minister what his government will do to support really important community assets like our football teams, like Harlow Town and Roydon, who also won their league this season?
Well, I've got very fond memories of visiting Harlow Town with my honourable friend. But the point he makes is a really important one, because football clubs bring our communities together. They're part of our social fabric, and in some places they're one of the last places left where members of the community can come together. And that's why my government fought so hard to create the independent football regulator to protect our national game. And we should remind everyone and every football fan across the country, from Harlow to Wigan Athletic, it was Labour on the side of football fans, and the Tories and the Reforms opposed us every step of the way.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This month's local election saw the biggest ever gap between votes and seats in England. Over 5 parties won more than 15% of the vote, or estimated to have done so. The public have increasingly clear that the public have had enough of Westminster business as usual. So does the Prime Minister still have full confidence in the first-past-the-post system to deliver strong and stable government?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Trump's war in Iran means the world will have to contend with a spike in inflation throughout this year. Many of my Cannock Chase constituents struggle to afford their weekly shop, whilst our farmers struggle to make a living producing what goes on the shelves. Labour governments should always be on the side of working people, whether they are in the supermarket or on the farm. If we aren't, we will not be forgiven. Will the Prime Minister follow the example of our European neighbours, including Ireland, and bring in a package of support for our farmers to help them stay afloat and protect our constituents from the worst of Trumpflation?
Mr. Speaker, before I answer that, I've just been handed a note saying that I inadvertently said we did a trade deal with North Korea rather than South Korea. That would be breaking news and not very good. So, before I'm referred to the Privilege Committee, can I correct the record, Mr. Speaker, in that regard? It was a slip of the tongue, but a pretty unfortunate one. In relation to the question, families and farmers are rightly frustrated about being impacted by a war that the UK didn't start. We're protecting working people is our priority. And today, Mr. Speaker, we're cutting red diesel costs for farmers by a third, delivering the lowest rate for 20 years. That's alongside a record £11.8 billion on farming budget and a new national programme to redistribute surplus food. We'll make sure no one in this country goes hungry. And I can confirm the Chancellor will make further announcements tomorrow.
Hannah Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, in Gorton and Denton, we have to pay full price for a pint. But here, for some reason, it's cheaper, and some MPs drink before voting. And that really shocked me when I came to Parliament, because it is our workplace. Now, does the Prime Minister agree with his own MPs who've defended their right to drink cheap alcohol at work? Or does he agree with me that MPs shouldn't be drinking on the job, given that we vote on huge things like the climate crisis, disabled people's rights, housing, child poverty? Sort your policies out.
Can I firstly welcome her to our place, because I think this is her first PMQ. Look, there are going to be different views on whether people should be able to enjoy a drink here or not. But I think we can agree that the majority of people in this country want an economy that works for them, public services that are there when they need them, and every child going as far as their talent or ability will take them. But the only way to deliver that is through a Labour government, as we are doing. And I know the Greens think that their leader walks on water. It turns out that he just lives on water and doesn't pay his council tax.
Kirksmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On a more serious note, sometimes we all have those meetings with constituents that really stick with us. For me, it was the lady who came to my surgery and told me about the character AI chatbot that had groomed her 12-year-old son. The chatbot turned him against his school, against his parents, made sexual advances, and even suggested that the bot and the boy might meet in the afterlife. Since this happened last year, I have been on the case with the government, and I'm pleased that we've taken new powers to regulate AI services. But still, every day, more young people are being harmed in this way, and they won't be safe until the tech companies can no longer access them in this way. So can the Prime Minister tell me how and when he will act to finally make the online world a safe place for our children?
The story of her constituent is deeply concerning. I thank her for raising it. It underlines why we must and we will act. We have already acted by shutting legal loopholes, so AI chatbots must abide by the Online Safety Act. But we have obviously got to look at what further measures we can take, including age-related bans, restricting children's use of chatbots, and stronger parental controls. And I'm meeting parents, teenagers and civil society later on this afternoon to discuss further stronger protections for children. We'll make sure that she is updated on those steps.
Alison Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At 19, I was in a coma after contracting bacterial meningitis. I lost 70% of my hearing and needed open-heart surgery. The MenB vaccine has saved lives since its introduction in 2015 for infants, but there remains a gap for high-risk adolescents whom the JCVI has not vaccinated. Following the devastating outbreaks within this cohort in Reading, Canterbury and Weymouth, the JCVI is finally reviewing the evidence base. So can the Prime Minister tell the House what are the government's next steps? When will they happen? And will he make tackling meningitis a priority for his new Secretary of State and arrange a meeting for Meningitis Now and me?
Yes, I will do both of those things. And can I thank her for raising her own experience here to highlight the issue. I think the thoughts of the whole House will be with families and friends of the young person who died. Can I thank all the public health specialists working in Reading to make sure those affected are receiving appropriate treatment. And her question reminds us that vaccines do save lives, and we must do everything we can in relation to that.
Debbie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, littering and fly tipping is a blight on our communities. Yes. This isn't just an issue for Lewisham, it's an issue for towns and cities across our countries and indeed rural areas. Nobody wants to see a dirty mattress or cans or bottles up against roads or gates. It's awful. Yeah. And I welcome the government's strategy and plans to give councils more powers to manage fly tipping, but I absolutely believe more needs to be done. And does the Prime Minister agree with me? It's absolutely time to have a national conversation about how we manage and deal with littering.
Well, can I thank her for raising this, because the government is cracking down on disgraceful waste criminals. Mr. Speaker, that includes tougher penalties for fly tippers, including service in clean-up squads and potentially losing their driving licence, more powers and funding for the Environment Agency, and stronger checks across the industry to tackle fly tipping at its source.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Gallows Brook in my constituency has the highest concentration of forever chemicals in the country. The BBC reports today that the concentrations are 47,000 times higher than the environmental quality standard, yet the Environment Agency has no plan for regular monitoring. A stream flows through the garden of my resident, Lee. She has suffered from ill health for 8 years. She took chickens, they have died. She had a dog, it developed a tumour and died. She's concerned that she may be poisoning her neighbours when she gives them vegetables. Will the Prime Minister agree for the Environment and Health Secretaries to meet with me and my constituents to explore what more can be done?
Yes, I will, and I thank him for raising that, and I'll make sure that the detail is looked at and that appropriate steps are taken. Can I also take this opportunity through him to mark the tragic anniversary of the devastating fire in his constituency? And I know the thoughts of the whole House remain with the families and colleagues of Martin, of Jenny and of Dave, and I know he's done a lot to support them.
Mr. Speaker, a stroke happens every 5 minutes.
That's 6 lives changed in the time that we have been sat in this chamber. 2 years ago, when I was sat in this chamber, my husband suffered a stroke. We know that when it comes to the right care and treatment, every single second counts. We know firsthand why the work of the Stroke Association is so important, ensuring that everyone knows the signs and symptoms, because when a stroke strikes, acting fast matters. Would the Prime Minister join me in marking Stroke Awareness Month and update the House on what he's doing to ensure every stroke survivor gets the care they need to support to recover and to thrive?
My honourable friend raises an important issue, and government is investing in our NHS to make sure that every second counts. I know her husband, and I know the impact that this had on him and on her and their wider family. And can I thank her for raising such a personal issue in this chamber to highlight this point. Because of the choices we've made, ambulance response times are at their fastest for 5 years, and we're investing £10 billion to innovate technology and transformation, with the NHS already using AI to cut treatment time for stroke patients by an hour and tripling full recovery rates.
Mr. Macbeth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For clarity, does the Prime Minister agree with Andy Burnham when he says we should rejoin the European Union? Or does he agree with Andy Burnham when he says we shouldn't rejoin the European Union?
I agree with what we said in our manifesto, which we are implementing. We are closer to the EU by the agreement we reached last year. We'll be closer again by the agreement we reached this year. We're building on the botched Brexit deal that they did, which did such damage to our country.
Mr. Speaker, my community in Crewe and Nantwich has been left in deep shock and concern following allegations of serious sexual offences, forced marriage and modern slavery against members of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. Will the Prime Minister join me in thanking Cheshire Constabulary, Cheshire East Council and wider agencies for their response to these concerning events? And will he commit to ensuring that we receive the necessary resources to deliver justice where crimes have been committed and to reassure the wider community that this government is on their side?
Well, thank my honourable friend, and I'm grateful to all the agencies involved in enforcement action, including Cheshire Police. It is vital that local public services get the funding that they need, and that's why we've increased Cheshire's police budget by over £15 million. Mr. Speaker, and we've recruited 3,000 more neighbourhood police officers while bringing forward wide-ranging reforms to ensure that everyone has access to swift and equal justice.
Sarah Olney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the Prime Minister will join me in congratulating the 54 Liberal Democrats who won all 54 seats on Richmond-upon-Thames Council at the recent local elections. But would he also agree with me that first-past-the-post system that produced this result doesn't give our communities the representation that they voted for, and that this failure to respond to voters' preferences is fuelling disengagement with our democracy? Will the Prime Minister declare his support for changing electoral systems in the UK to ensure that every vote matters?
Well, I'm really sorry. The answer is no, and I can't bring myself to congratulate the councillors, so I apologise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From 1997, the Prime Minister campaigned to scrap single-judge trials in Northern Ireland. Yet when I opposed his government's plan to bring in single-judge trials in England and Wales, I received hostile briefings and smears about my mental health from the lads in number 10 Downing Street. The Chief Whip's shaking his head, but he knows about it, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister knows that my nephew Matty took his own life as a result of work-related stress as a young criminal lawyer. So during Mental Health Awareness Week, while ministers spoke with compassion about health and well-being, did the Prime Minister reflect on those hostile, discriminatory briefings which he knew about and he allowed to happen?
Can I thank him, and he has told me previously about Matty and the impact that had on him. I totally understand that, and I want to be absolutely clear that nobody should be smeared in relation to mental health. Nobody on any issue, whatever they may argue on any other issue. Nobody, and I will do everything I can to make sure that that is the position.
Kit Malthouse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 5 weeks' time, the government will be introducing penal tariffs on steel imports into the UK, and at the same time massively reducing tariff-free quotas. This will cause enormous damage to the UK manufacturing base in the absence of adequate steel-making capacity in the UK. More than that, the way the tariffs are drawn mean that for my constituent company, Stannah Stairlifts, a world-beating company based in Andover, for them to import steel into the UK and manufacture their product will face tariffs, but for a competitor import finished product made from the self-same steel will not attract tariffs. This cannot be a situation that can be allowed to persist. So could I ask the Prime Minister, please, to arrange for his Secretary of State to focus on this issue and get it sorted out?
Can I thank him for raising this really important issue, and can I give him assurance it's not just the Secretary of State, I am also absolutely focused on this, because we're all very well aware of the consequences that would otherwise follow. So I'm personally vested in this, and the entire Cabinet is, because it is a very important issue, as he rightly points out.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front bench change over.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. We're going to carry on in a second. Tomorrow, questions with Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, okay? 10:15 in the morning. It would be great to have you all there. Thank you very much for everyone who's joined today. We're going to keep carrying on. So if you want to stick around, I'll be grateful. If you want to disappear, we'll catch you at the same time next week, but don't forget tomorrow. And hit that like button on the way out, please. Thank you very much. Catch you all soon.
Right, we now come to the urgent question. Show Secretary of State, Andrew Boy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Business and Trade to make a statement regarding the government's decision to issue general trade licences for sanctioned processed oil products prohibited under the Russia Sanctions EU Exit Regulations 2019.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Putin must never be allowed victory in Ukraine. And we will do everything we can as a government and as a country to debilitate and degrade the Russian war machine. That is precisely what our sanctions regime is designed to do. We've sanctioned more than 3,300 individuals and organisations and hundreds of shadow fleet tankers. It's as tough a sanctions regime as any in the world, and we are proud of it. I want to make it absolutely clear that our sanctions regime today is tougher than it was yesterday or last week. In fact, thanks to the Russia Sanctions EU Exit Amendment Regulations 2026 statutory instrument, we will, for the first time, from today, for the first time, ban the import not only of uranium, but also the import of Russian oil products processed in a third country. We are not lifting any existing sanctions at all. We are, like other countries, phasing in these sanctions, which is why, in the light of the situation in the Middle East, we have issued a targeted, temporary licence to allow the continued import of diesel and jet fuel. These licences are temporary and targeted. We will review them regularly and repeatedly and will suspend them as soon as we possibly can. As a result of all of the measures that we have taken, there will be less Russian oil on the market, not more. Russia will be poorer, not richer, and Putin will be weaker, not stronger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in its 18th packet of sanctions in January this year, His Majesty's Government prohibited the import of Russian petroleum products produced in third countries from Russian oil, obliging importers to provide proof of the origin of oil used in petroleum product production. Yet yesterday evening at 7 p.m, Whilst we in this very chamber were debating the future of our own North Sea oil and gas industry, and Labour MPs were being equipped to vote against new oil and gas licences in the North Sea, the government slipped out an announcement that general trade licence for sanction-processed oil products now permits certain activities prohibited under the Russian sanctions regulations 2019, such as the import of diesel and jet fuel to the UK. In other words, Mr. Speaker, this government has rolled back on its commitments to Ukraine and given the green light to purchase Russian oil from third countries, while at the same time as they were whipping their MPs to vote to shut down our own oil and gas production. The exact same time. It's an absolute disgrace, and they should all be utterly ashamed of themselves. What message does this send the international community? What message does this send the people of Ukraine? And what message, Mr. Speaker, does this send to our workers in our own North Sea oil and gas industry, which is being crushed by the misguided eco-zealotry of the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero? And also, Mr. Speaker, we are not only rewarding the thuggish and criminal behaviour of the Russian state, we are punishing ourselves and the skilled workforce here in the United Kingdom. And who loses out, Mr. Speaker, whilst we signal to Russia that we are willing once again to buy their oil? The British people, Mr. Speaker. We are seeing 1,000 job losses in oil and gas in the UK every single month, losing out on £25 billion in tax revenue over the next 10 years, which we could be investing in our public services. Just yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I pointed out that Moscow would be celebrating the useful idiots opposite, and today the government has proved my point. According to the government website, where the announcement was made yesterday, the Secretary of State does have the power to vary, revoke or suspend this licence at any time. So can the Minister say if the Secretary of State will consider this decision? Can I ask the Minister why he believes that increased reliance on foreign imports improves British energy security? What alternatives did the government consider? And who on earth is in charge of our energy security? The Energy Secretary, the Prime Minister, or is it Vladimir Putin?
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I think the member must have missed the fact that there was a statutory instrument which implements the ban on refined Russian crude oil products processed in a third country for the first time coming into force today. It didn't come into force earlier on the year. It didn't, incidentally, Mr. Speaker, come into force when he was in government, because when they were in government, they allowed the continued processing of oil products to come into the UK, and he personally did absolutely nothing about it. The truth is, both sides of the House agree, and in fact, I think all sides of the House agree. Well, we've not heard from Reform yet, but I think all sides of the House agree that we need to make sure that Putin doesn't prosper. One of the key ways of doing that is making sure that we tackle the shadow fleet, which we've been doing very successfully. More than 500 tankers have been disrupted, $1.6 billion US dollars worth less oil being transported this year than last year because of those sanctions. And to be precise about the question that he's asked, will we review the licences? I've already said that we will review the licences. They are there for a very simple reason, which is that just as when he was a minister, the previous government nearly always introduced sanctions in a phased way. That's precisely what we are doing in relation to these sanctions on oil products that have been processed in a third country. We're doing the right thing here, and I would have thought that he would want to praise us. Unfortunately, I think he's tried to find a political headline rather than look into the facts.
Alex Sobel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This package of sanctions has come very quickly to us, and I am slightly concerned in how it's been communicated today. So a bit of clarity would be really welcome. So how long will these regulations made under the Sanction Money Laundering Act 2018 will stand prior to the new package of sanctions will complete their phasing in? Will there be a gap here, or will there be an immediate turn to the new sanctions and implementation of the sanctions regime?
So there are two things here. There's a set of sanctions which come into force today, including on oil and oil products that have been processed in a third country. That's the first time that the UK has gone down that route. As I say, the previous government chose not to go down that route, even though there were people arguing for it. And I think that this will be an important new measure, ratcheting up the pressure on the Russian regime. And at the same time, in part in recognition of the instability that there might be in the energy markets as a result of the events in in the Middle East and the war in Iran, which obviously we've chosen not to take part in, as a result of the instability that there might be in those markets, we've decided to implement these, as many other countries have done, including Australia and Canada, in a phased way. And that is why we've introduced these licences in relation to diesel and jet fuel. As I said before, I want these licences to last as short a time as is possible and is necessary to manage that market instability, and that's why we will review them as much as possible. I pay tribute to my honourable friend as our trade envoy in Ukraine. We stand 100% beside our friends in Ukraine, and indeed the package of sanctions that we've introduced this time round is the toughest of any, and I know our Ukrainian friends have supported them.
Only Liberal Democrats spoke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Inconsistencies and U-turns have become characteristic of this government, but this is more than just a redirection of policy. This is a betrayal of Ukraine. This government is abandoning our European ally in their moment of need by putting more money into the pockets of President Putin to fund his war machine. Last month, the Liberal Democrats urged the government to implement a bold plan to keep Britain moving, which included a 10p cut to fuel duty, but also featured proposals to boost public transport by slashing bus fares to £1 and cutting rail fares by 10%. This would have taken pressure off our forecourts, but the government sat on their hands. And instead, the government believes that our best course of action is to abandon all morality and to indirectly fund Putin's illegal war. So I would like to ask the Minister, how much money will be spent on Russian oil products as a result of this decision? And will he admit that the lifting of these sanctions will be indirectly funding Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. I do just need to explain to the lady, we are not lifting any sanctions. We are implementing new sanctions which only come into force today. Up until now, it has been perfectly legal to import Russian oil products processed in a third country into the UK. Up until now. It's only now because of this government, with the new sanctions that come into force today, that that is not going to be able to be possible. So I really do hope that the Honourable Lady will withdraw the comments she's made. The whole of this House stands 100% beside Ukraine. I myself am probably the longest-standing critic of Putin in this House. I was saying back in 2014, when others were in government and not doing anything about the invasion of Crimea, that we should be tackling Russian aggression, because otherwise, if Putin was allowed to take Crimea with impunity, he would come for the rest. I do recognise that honourable friends of hers have been calling on the Select Committee and elsewhere for us to be able to tackle precisely this issue of Russian crude oil that ends up being processed in other countries and it ends up coming into the UK, because that, up until now, has been a source of income for Putin. But we're the government that is stopping this, not the government that is enabling it.
Colin Billett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful for the clarity that my honourable friend provides for us on this issue, because it has been of extreme concern for a number of colleagues. Can I also ask my right honourable friend to consider that this wider global insecurity around energy needs to have some global cooperation and collaboration, and this indeed is something that the UK government could lead on. We are hosting the G20 next year. In the process of building up to that G20 summit, can we consider making sure that energy security in a global context is the priority for that particular summit?
Minister.
Well, she makes an immensely important point about energy security, which is one of the reasons why we are passionately committed to trying to make sure that we are not reliant on oil products from anywhere else in the world, and that we are able to not only meet our net zero targets, but also to be able to be energy resilient for ourselves. She's also right that we need to work alongside our allies, I would argue, not only in energy security, but also in relation to imposing sanctions, because it's only when we cooperate with other countries, and as I say, we are doing remarkably similar set of processes as Australia, Canada, I think, and several other countries as well. So we need to move forward together if we are to defeat Putin, and we are to make sure that we have energy security for our own households and our own businesses.
Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister, I'd like to pay tribute to the Minister. Over many, many years, he's been very tough on Russia. He's sanctioned in Russia, and so am I. We both previously have chaired the Russia APPG. So I know he will sit very uncomfortably today with this announcement. Can I also say that I do welcome the new sanctions through third countries, but I am very concerned. There'll be more concern in Kiev, quite frankly, about what he calls temporary licences. How long does temporary mean? Unfortunately, this money, through these imports, will continue to fund Putin's illegal war machine in Kiev. It will kill women, children and men. So, whilst the government is denying a licence to drill in the North Sea, it is unfortunately giving a licence to kill to Putin.
Minister.
As it happens, I'm not on the Russian sanctions list. Though actually, when I raised this with the Russian... and I think I might be on the Honourable Lady's sanctions list. But in actual fact, when I raised this with the Russian ambassador, because I was a bit upset, he said, well, we have many lists, Mr. Bryant. So I don't know whether I'm on a target list, but maybe slightly different. Anyway, look, I'm not ashamed of what we're doing today. As a very stout defender of Ukraine's right to defend itself, and as somebody who argued for a very long time that we should be trying to make sure that Russian frozen assets were made available to Ukraine, I am proud of what we're doing because we are introducing tougher sanctions regime. The only bit that we have had to take cognizance of is the fact that the situation in the Middle East means that there was a danger that there'd be a sudden spike in prices, and we had to address that. I very much hope that this will be a very temporary measure, and I will be keeping a very watchful eye to make sure that we are able to suspend these licences as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for coming to the Chamber to answer this really important UQ. And the Minister will know that at the forefront of this, we must keep in our minds our allies in Ukraine who've been fighting this terrible, illegal war for many years. I'm proud that many of my constituents, during the start of that invasion, took in many people from Ukraine. My constituent contacted me, and to echo my honourable friend's comments, I'm concerned about the communication around this because she said, I'm one of your constituents and I've never had reason to contact you. However, waking up this morning, I'm both angry by the announcement and ashamed, snuck out last night, that your government is partially lifting sanctions on the purchase of Russian oil. So can the Minister reassure me and my constituents that this will be a temporary measure, similar to the sanctions restrictions by the Americans, which my understanding was that that's for 30 days?
Mr. Speaker, you will be aware of the phrase that sometimes it's conspiracy and sometimes it's something else. I just want to say that I think in this particular regard, in relation to the communications around all of this, I think there's no conspiracy. Nobody is trying to undermine our support for Ukraine. We were always, the statutory instrument in relation to the tougher measures was always going to come into force today. Up until today, it was perfectly legal to import Russian refined goods, products that have been refined in third-party countries into the UK. It will no longer be legal to do so, and there are several categories under that which will be banned. So, for instance, it will tackle carbon fibre used in the production of Russian drones, chemicals used in precision missiles, and goods used in emerging technologies such as quantum computing and AI. And I want to make sure that these licences will be as temporary as possible. I, in 2022, along with the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, visited not just Kyiv, roughly a fortnight before the full-scale invasion. We went to Avdiivka, right at the very edge, and we saw Russian troops as snipers pointed at Ukrainians. This battle has gone on since 2014, not just since 2022, and I can assure her that the British government stands 100% beside the Ukrainian people.
Alistair Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For years, ministers on the Treasury bench have told us that oil is traded as a global commodity, so it makes no difference where in the world it is taken out of the ground, and as a consequence, we can wind down production on the UK continental shelf. Availability of supply would continue. Given what the Minister has had to announce today, is he satisfied that that argument still holds water?
Minister.
Well, it's not been an argument I myself have advanced, though obviously I stand by my Labour colleagues if that's the argument that they've been making. I'm part of a team after all. But I think the point I would make is in relation to drilling in the North Sea. I think it's a wrong argument to say that if we were to issue new licences today, that would affect the energy crisis that we're facing because of the situation in the Middle East. And what we absolutely have to do is we absolutely have to make sure today that we deal with the market instability that there is. It was not our choice to have this war in Iran. We've not taken part in it. We think it was a mistake to enter in without a plan. And I'm very aware from conversations that I've had with many of my counterparts in the Gulf, perhaps more of that later on today, that these issues are matters that are very at the forefront of their minds.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister assure me that we continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with our Ukrainian friends, particularly to reassure my constituents, my Ukrainian constituents, one of whom has written to me to say that the biggest issues facing civilians in Ukraine at the moment is the constant uncertainty, not only physical safety, but the emotional pressure of living with disrupted homes, schools, work, healthcare and family life. They are standing firm, and I am sure he can reassure me that we are standing firm by their side.
Absolutely, and one of the things I was really proud of earlier this year, going to Kyiv, was seeing one of the bridges that had been blown up when the Russians were advancing in the hope of taking Kyiv immediately, which has been reconstructed with UK export finance support, British steel made in Glasgow, which was transported. It only took 5 weeks to get out there, and designed by British engineers working with Turkish counterparts. So I'm really proud of the work that we're doing on reconstruction in Ukraine. I thought it was absolutely despicable when I was there that Putin was deliberately targeting the energy supplies in Kyiv so as to freeze people into submission. That, in my mind, is a war crime.
Sir Jones.
Before he pointed it out himself, I was going to acknowledge this minister's long and honourable record of opposing the killer in the Kremlin when he was on the opposition backbenches, and I have no reason to believe that he's changed his mind. But does he agree with me that this complex issue has been handled very, very clumsily, to put it mildly? Would it not have been better to have made a statement rather than having to respond to an urgent question? Were the Ukrainians given this quite complicated explanation in advance? And will he not concede that if we had not embarked on quite such a doctrinaire journey against further drilling in the North Sea, we might not have been put in the position of having to make such an unsavoury and unpalatable decision?
Minister. Well, the one bit I completely agree with him on is that we've handled this clumsily, and that's entirely my fault, and I apologise to all honourable members. I think we've ended up giving the wrong impression of what we're trying to do. We're trying to strengthen the regime, not weaken it. We're not waiving any sanctions, and as I say, for the first time from today, we have legislation in place which means that it will be illegal to import Russian refined goods that have been refined in a third country, including India and Turkey and elsewhere. But I think I disagree with the other points he made, but I'm grateful for the nice comments he made about me.
Jonathan Brash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've listened very carefully to the Minister's explanation as to what exactly we're doing, and I join with other colleagues from across the House about the failure to communicate this effectively in the last 24 hours. I've had constituents very upset getting in touch with me about this issue. One of the reports, Bloomberg, seems to be indicating that there's briefing and counter-briefing across government at the moment, and that this is a departure from our European colleagues. Can the Minister confirm whether or not we are departing from our European colleagues on the sanctions we're putting on Ukraine?
So, first of all, it is true that this piece of the jigsaw in relation to sanctions policy lies across two departments. So the FCDO is in charge of sanctions policy, and we in the Department for Business and Trade have responsibility not only for trade but also for export licences, and that's why there's been a bit of a miscommunication between the two departments. But I have to tell him that is entirely my fault and nobody else's. So if anybody wants to have a go at anybody, they could just have a go at me. and I can't remember what the second half... Oh, about Europe. The second half... so it is true that the European Union introduced their legislation faster than we did. They did it earlier. They did it before the Iranian conflict came into play. And I think, and that's one of the reasons why there's been some difference between us. Normally we try to align ourselves all the way with the European Union and with others. But I note, for instance, that the United States today, only today, I think, has extended its waiver for another month. And I think I'm right in saying, as I said earlier, that Australia and Canada have done something very similar to us. But it has been standard practice when we've introduced these kind of sectoral sanctions that we've introduced them in a phased way, because that makes it possible for UK businesses, apart from anything else, to accommodate themselves.
Dave Dugan. Mr. Speaker, there's a really unfortunate supply and demand dichotomy here, because on the one hand, and I have to remind the Minister he is bound by collective responsibility, might be a different department but it's still his government, are artificially accelerating the decline in production within the North Sea with no reference to domestic demand, only hell-bent on reducing domestic production. Meanwhile, at the same time, this carve-out, which allows Russian oil created as refined as fuel to come into this economy, that will result in a transaction to where it was refined, which will result in a transaction back to Russia. So this will allow the funding of Russia's war process against our friends in Ukraine. He must concede that.
Can I first of all welcome him to his new responsibilities, though I must say I really liked his predecessor in the role. I got into terrible trouble when I tweeted that, so maybe I shouldn't say that in the House either, but it's good to see him in his place. He makes an interesting argument, which I would expect him to make, and it's true, I am bound by collective responsibility. I'm not trying to evade that. It's just that sometimes I don't know the answers to all the questions that apply to somebody else's portfolio. But I do want to make sure that he understands that up until now, up until today, it has been perfectly legal for people to bring products that have been refined in a third country but originated from Russian crude into the UK. It's only now that we're changing that. It's only now that we're changing that.
Bill Britton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As someone who myself has been sanctioned by the Russian state and worked on tackling financial crime in British business for more than a decade, it was apparent to me, after only a cursory review of the gov.uk website, that this is a new general licence to allow the rollout of the new regime that the Minister has mentioned today. So can I thank him for coming to the House to set the record straight, and also can he assuage my constituents that actually what we've heard in the Chamber today has been a lot of rhetoric and bluster, and this really will be a new regime which will be strengthened.
Minister.
Well, I apologise for the rhetoric and bluster, Mr. Speaker, but it is my general way of doing things. So I'm not sure that it's a particularly cruel attack from my colleague. No, the serious point here is that we are. I am proud of what we're doing today. I'm not hiding away from what we're doing today, but we could definitely have communicated this better, and that is entirely my fault.
Bob Black.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's somewhat baffling. I know the Minister wasn't here during the debate yesterday, but we had a full day's debate on energy supply that no government minister mentioned anything to do with this particular issue. Hence why there is the need for an urgent question today. He will know, of course, that liquid gas, diesel and petroleum is shipped by sea. It takes a considerable period of time to get from the port to the UK. So could he set out the position now about ships that have set sail already, those that are potentially going to be setting off, how they will be treated once they get to the United Kingdom? Because this is the important issue that many businesses will want to know about.
Well, actually, he makes an extremely good point, which is one of the reasons why we've needed to phase this and why we thought it was important to do so, because of the time lag that occurs. We needed to make it possible for businesses to be, not caught in legal limbo, as it were, because of the sanctions coming into force today. I think it's probably best if I write to him with the details and put a copy of the letter in the House, just so that everybody understands that, because it might be useful to other business folk as well. We are providing additional information on the government website so that people can understand precisely how excuse me, precisely, I had some water, thank you, precisely how all of this operates. But as I say, he makes a good point.
Goldsborough.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I do welcome the new sanctions. The concern I have is over the temporary use of licence agreements, because I think this goes to an issue that is bigger for the country, that we keep talking about supply side instead of demand side in terms of petroleum. We need to have a frank and honest conversation with our constituents and with the public, as our Australian colleagues did with the Prime Minister down under as well. So can I encourage my right honourable friend on the front bench to actually have these honest conversations with our public about what the cost is now to the conflict within the Middle East and how we need to move ourselves further and faster away from petrochemicals to give us the sustainable economy that we all need? Well, I completely agree with him, and that's the kind of tenor of the conversation that has been happening. As my honourable friend will know, the Prime Minister has been chairing regular meetings to consider the impact of the situation in the Middle East. This is undoubtedly one of the areas where we had to take action just to make sure that we could minimise the instability in the market so as to, frankly, protect British businesses who were already exposed to high enough if not too high energy costs, and British families as well. But he makes a good point, and of course we should have honest conversations with the public on it.
Ben Maguire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rocketing fuel prices are hitting rural families and constituencies like mine of North Cornwall, but the answer can never be to play directly into Putin's hands by weakening sanctions, just as Ukraine is finally pushing back against Russia's war machine. Does the Minister agree with me that we can both stand firmly with our Ukraine allies, maintaining sanctions on Russian jet fuel and diesel that's refined in third countries, while also supporting rural households for a temporary VAT cut on heating oil and a 10p cut to fuel duty, which could be funded for a levy on big banks' eye-watering profits?
Well, I think he wrote the first half of that before he heard what I had to say on the subject, but just to make it absolutely clear once again, up until now, it has been possible for people to perfectly legally to import into the UK refined products that have been processed in third countries that originally originated from Russian crude oil. That is changing from today because of the legislation that we've introduced, and it applies today. We are doing this in a phased way, which is why the licences exist, and he will know that we've already we are already taking very seriously the issues that affect many, many families, including in my own constituency. It's not a very large number of people who rely on oil for their home heating, but we have already taken action in relation to that. There's some, I think, 3 million houses across the whole of the UK who are benefiting from that, and I know these are issues that the Chancellor of the Exchequer is looking at very, very closely indeed.
Chris Hinchcliffe.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for clarifying that sanctions on Russia are tougher today than they were yesterday, but fundamentally the furore around licences to phase in the new regulations arises because we have an economy that is reliant on jet fuel. And as long as that remains the case, these issues will continue to arise. So what conversation is the Minister having with others across government to move us even faster and further away from reliance on jet fuel in our economy?
Minister.
Well, he's absolutely right that we need to make sure that these sanctions are not only implemented, but they are effective. And I would say, and I think the previous government felt this as well, that you had to have a constant ratchet or like a kind of whack-a-mole approach to making sure that any new diversion that there might be, that Putin might take advantage of, we would want to tackle. I'm feeling a bit guilty because he talked about jet fuel, and unfortunately I had to fly back last night from Strasbourg, which was just as well because otherwise I wouldn't be able to do this UQ today. But he makes a good point about we need to make sure that the aviation industry in its totality is more cognizant of where it needs to get to on net zero as well.
Mr. McVeigh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister explain why this government sees fit to ban new licences to drill for oil and gas in the North Sea, which would have provided the UK with energy security, affordability, reliability and tax revenue, whilst at the same time buying oil from Russia, a betrayal of UK citizens, Ukrainian citizens, and playing into Putin's hands?
Minister.
Well, the Honourable Lady knows I'm very fond of her. the right honourable lady. I'm terribly sorry. I'm so fond of her that I think of her in a commonplace way. Or should I say a common sense way, because she was the Minister for Common Sense, of course. And despite the fact that she was the Minister for Common Sense, she never took any measures to stop the import into the UK of Russian oil when she was the Minister. Oh dear.
David.
Speaker, I appreciate the clarity that the Minister has provided today, that the overall effect of the package of sanctions coming from this country towards Russia will mean that it is much more under the screws than it was. One of the effects of the war, Trump's war in Iran, is that the cost of Russian oil has been inflated, and that's perpetuating the war in Ukraine. So does the Minister agree with me that we need to redouble our efforts to enhance our own domestic, renewable and nuclear production of energy so that we're less dependent on fossil fuel markets and also less likely to be contributing to perpetuating conflict around the world?
Well, I completely agree with the comments he just made. I would also point out, of course, that the sanctions regime, notwithstanding the point he makes about every time the price of oil goes up, that is a benefit to Putin around the world, which is one of the problems and ironies of the situation in the Middle East at the moment. Notwithstanding that, Russia's economy is stagnating because of the sanctions that we've imposed. Growth has slowed to a crawl. This month, May 2026, Russia slashed its economic growth forecast again, and international sanctions have deprived Russia of at least $450 billion since February 2022, the equivalent of 4 years of funding for Putin's illegal war. We need to keep that up. It's tough, but we need to keep it up to make sure he doesn't have victory.
Samuel Wilson.
No matter how the Minister tries to confuse the issue by talking about what the situation was up until now and the new arrangements which are meant to tighten up sanctions today, the fact remains that we are now granting permits for Russian oil to come into the United Kingdom. Now, he may justify it, as he has done a number of exploiting our own resources and taxing our own oil refineries. We're going to be dependent upon Russian oil, and we're going to be financing Putin's war. Yes.
Minister. I'm going to try again, Mr. Speaker. The point I'm making is not the point he thinks I'm making. The point I'm making is that up until now we have been doing precisely what he's saying, which is that we have been allowing Russian oil processed in other countries to come into the UK without any impediment whatsoever. That's precisely what we are putting an end to. Now, if he'd stood up last week and the week before and the week before and the week before and called for us to put an end to it, I would have more time for the comments that he's just made.
Steve Brace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for his usual clarity and candour on this issue, and I welcome the new package of sanctions. Can the Minister confirm one last time for me, my Ukrainian residents and our Ukrainian friends in Ukraine that this package of sanctions and what we're talking about today is a new package of sanctions, some of which we are introducing in a phased manner, and is not a loosening of any existing sanctions that are already in place? Thank you.
We have not suspended, waived or got rid of any existing sanctions of any kind whatsoever. We are introducing new sanctions. It's our latest set of sanctions. And in fact, one of the other things that I've been very keen to do as Minister is to try to make sure that when things are exported to a third country legally, but we think they might end up in Russia, which would then be a breach of the sanctions, they will have to get a licence for the first time. So we are introducing new legislation in my capacity for end-use sanctions controls. We will be the first country to do that. We are determined to make sure that Putin doesn't win his war.
Scotland using potentially Russian fuel. We need to grip this issue, surely. And whether that was the case before, whether it's the case in the future, we need to grip this. And we also need to grip the reality that the North Sea, we keep hearing about it being a declining asset. The Norwegians don't see it as a declining asset. Exactly. They are expanding their exploration in the North Sea, and we have untapped resources west of Shetland. We need to look again at domestic supply, surely.
Minister.
I'm sorry. Up until today, it was perfectly legal for people to use Russian crude oil that had been processed in a third country and brought into the UK. He's inventing a saga which doesn't exist.
Having Ukrainians in our constituencies wake up to headlines about watering down sanctions, why is the government not prioritising measures that would permanently cut bills and reduce fossil fuel dependence, including fully removing the renewables obligation levy and fast-tracking of energy market reform?
I thought the Liberal Democrats were in favour of moving towards renewables. Sorry, I may have misunderstood the question, and if she wants to grab me afterwards, and as I've said earlier, the problems about the headlines this morning, where I think some journalists saw one half of the story and not the whole of the story, that's entirely down to me and my fault.
Mr. Speaker, the sanctions on Russian gas and oil were placed there for a very good reason, as we know, but I would seriously question how environmentally friendly it is to import supplies of gas and oil when we have one of the largest natural resources just off the coast of Scotland, and this government is continuing to refuse to allow it to be further explored. The madness of the pursuit of net zero is exposed by the fact that there is more pollution importing these products whilst not drilling our own, especially when it would create jobs and revenue for the Exchequer.
We are putting an end to the import into the UK of these products from Russia. We want to debilitate and degrade the Russian war machine. But the only point I'd make to her is, even if we were to grant licences today for further exploration, that would not meet the problem that we have today in relation to the instability in the energy market because of the war in Iran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just picking up this theme of communications and the mishandling of the communications and the anxiety that that's caused for many of our constituents. The Financial Times today is still reporting an easing of sanctions, the BBC as well. These are not outlets known to hyperbole. Perhaps the government could issue a correction to major media outlets?
I'm trying to do it here and now and in live, and indeed I went to see the BBC earlier and gave them a clip, but just to be absolutely clear, we are not suspending any sanctions. The sanctions regime in the UK is tougher today than it was yesterday, than it was a week ago, and than it was a year ago. And I'm absolutely certain that as my colleagues in the Foreign Office and I in DBT progress with these, looking at the constant issues of diversion and subversion of our sanctions regime, the regime will get even tougher as the months and years proceed.
That brings us to Jim Shannon.
I will hit them with the prize of a question. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State very much for his, I believe, sincere and helpful answers. Instead of forcing, but can I say this gently to the Secretary of State, instead of forcing British business to navigate complex legal loopholes to import foreign energy and pressing ahead with a permanent ban on our own resources under the Energy Independence Bill, there is, I believe, and many of us believe, a very clear solution to this problem. So very kindly, Secretary of State, if this government wants true energy security, they must scrap the ideological roadblocks, approve the crucial domestic projects like Rosebank and Jackdaw oilfields, and unleash, because that's what would happen, unleash the full potential of British North Sea production. So can I ask with the Secretary of State, please discuss with the Cabinet members and demand common sense and energy security to be prioritised over any single government minister on this point of view. Thanks so much.
Mr. Speaker, all roads lead to Jim Shannon, I think, and certainly all urgent questions do. I feel as if I wasn't here for the debate yesterday because I was in Strasbourg, but I feel as if I'm hearing some of the debate that was rehearsed yesterday, and I don't want to repeat those arguments. The only point I would make to him, and I'm grateful for his comments about my sincerity on this, I'm desperate to make sure that the Ukrainian people are able to assert their freedom and defeat Putin, and we will do everything in our power to secure that outcome.
That completes the statement. Can we now, urgent question even, can we now let the front benches change over? Point of order, Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, the West Bank village of Khan el Amer
is under threat at the moment and being forcibly evacuated by Israeli forces and illegal settlers. Can you advise me, is there some way that we can persuade the Foreign Office to come to this House and make a statement about their attitude towards these illegal forcible evacuations and, of course, the continued military support for Israel that is occasioning the ability of Israel to do just that?
Hear, hear. Can I thank the honourable gentleman? What I would say is I've been expecting a statement today. I'm hoping for a statement tomorrow. But if not, I'm sure that somebody might be able to put a UQ in, and who knows what that might bring. Right. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
King's Speech, motion for an address, adjourned debate on question.
I inform the House that I have selected Amendment O in the name of the Leader of the Opposition, which will be moved at the start of the debate, and Amendments L in the Right Honourable Member for Kingston and Surbiton, and P in the name of the Honourable, which has been moved by the Member for Clacton, which will be moved at the end of the debate. The question is that the humble address be presented to His Majesty as on the order paper. I now call the Shadow Secretary of State for Defence. No, it shouldn't be. It should be Secretary of State for Defence. Or Minister. Sorry, the amendment's going to be moved. That was right. So it was the loop you gave me that worried me. So, Shadow Secretary of State for Defence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the amendment as on the order paper. And it is an honour to open the final debate on the King's Speech on defence readiness on behalf of the opposition. But may I begin, Mr. Speaker, by expressing how saddened I was to hear of the death of Lance Bombardier Keir Sullivan from the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery. My condolences and the condolences of the whole of the opposition are with her family, both personal and regimental. Now, before turning to the defence-related matters that were or were not included in the Government's programme for the next legislative session, I pay tribute to the men and women serving in our armed forces right now across the globe. Whether on board our nuclear submarines providing a continuous at-sea deterrent, or those deployed in the Middle East to defend our overseas bases, I thank them for their service and unwavering professionalism. And I also want to pay tribute to our brave Ukrainian allies who continue to defy those original expectations of an early Russian victory. And, Mr. Speaker, I do want to say, when we take steps to publicly show our sympathy for Ukraine's heroic struggle, such as by wearing badges, as I have done every day since the invasion, or by displaying Ukraine flags from local and national government buildings, we do it not just to show solidarity with a democratic nation under brutal attack by a dictatorship, but because it is firmly in our national interest to assist Ukraine in keeping Putin's military in check. So when newly elected councils make their first priority on entering office pulling down the Ukraine flag, we are entitled to ask if the party in question cares about the fate of its people and understands the implications for our own national security if Russia were to triumph. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to pay tribute to all those who served our country in the past, our brave veterans. Which brings me to Labour's plans as set out in the King's Speech. Now, of all Britain's military capabilities, few are more important to our defence nor more widely admired, particularly by the United States, than our special forces. And yet, at a time of war on two fronts, Labour are ploughing on with a bill which will reopen vexatious legal actions that not only threaten our veterans, but would undermine the morale of all who serve today, in particular in the Special Forces. Special Forces like the SAS and those of that regiment on duty in Loughgall in 1987, Mr. Speaker, who shot IRA terrorists, headed to a police station driving a digger with a bomb in its bucket, firing machine guns into the building as they approached. I believe that those soldiers were acting to defend our society from terrorists intent on mass murder. But whatever one's view, surely going back almost 40 years to events that took place in split seconds makes no sense. Now, crucially, in October 2023, Coroner Justice McAlinden declined to list a new inquest into Loughgall precisely because of the cut-off date set by our Legacy Act, an act which therefore did its job in halting such cases and genuinely protecting our veterans from endless litigation. However, in his comments, Justice McAlinden did add that preparatory work for the inquest should continue because he noted there would be a general election the following year, stating, and I quote, that may affect how the legislation is implemented. Mr. Speaker, he had a point, didn't he? Because fast forward 3 years, and with war now facing us not just in Ukraine, but in the Middle East, the government of today remains intent on repealing the protections for veterans that we put in place. It goes without saying that Labour's plans will harm our veterans, once again keeping them awake at night with fear of whether they will be hauled before our courts. I give way to my own friend.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, can I commend the Shadow Minister for bringing this forward? He's right to put this on record. This is very much part of this debate. But it goes further than that. The veterans who can't sleep at night, the families who are worried about what's going to happen to their father, their brother or their sister, whatever the case may be. But does the Honourable Gentleman also agree with me it's affecting recruiting? Those who want to join the army are saying if we join and we get involved in a battle to protect this country, we could find ourselves being persecuted for it or taken to court. Does he feel, but for that reason and other reasons, government must be fair when it comes to the legislation and must follow the very points that the Shadow Minister has put forward?
Well, I'm always grateful to Honourable Gentleman for his very, very good interventions, and he's hit the nail on the head. This isn't just about veterans. As important as that is, it is about the wider impact on recruitment. And we don't just take my word for it or the Honourable Gentleman for Strangford. In November last year, 9 former 4-star generals wrote, and I quote, "This lawfare is a direct threat to national security," going on to say that the Troubles Bill achieves nothing and ongoing lawfare risks everything. So I asked Labour MPs this question. When considering the Troubles Bill and the issue of lawfare, surely the overriding factor to consider is the threat we face as a nation and the impact of this legislation on our ability to defend ourselves. Do they really think, in their heart of hearts, that this is what they should be prioritising just when we need our soldiers more than ever? I just want to make one more point, and then I'll give way to the lady. Mr. Speaker, I put this challenge to all those who intend to stand in Labour's leadership contest. Will those candidates seeking to become our next Prime Minister recognise that the first duty of any leader is defence of the realm, and that therefore it is in the national interest to scrap the Troubles Bill and back our brave veterans? I give way to the Honourable Lady.
I thank the Shadow Minister for giving way. Would he acknowledge that no party and no victims group in Northern Ireland supports his party's approach to the past, and that even the Dillon judgment last week did not in any way rule it legal? And would he not agree with me that, you know, soldiers following the rule of law is a matter of recruitment, and no soldier wants to be painted with a brush that they don't follow the rule of law? And would he care to articulate to the House, out of 300,000 soldiers who served under Operation Banner in Northern Ireland, how many actually have faced any judicial proceedings? It's in the very low 2 figures.
Well, I respect the Honourable Lady, and I respect the strength of her view on this matter. I would just say we have to deal with what is certain here. In my view, Mr. Speaker, it is extremely unlikely that any new cases would lead to prosecutions. It is, however, certain that were this process to recommence, it would damage the morale of our armed forces at a time of war on 2 fronts, and I think that is not in the national interest. I give way to my honourable friend.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend who's making an excellent intervention. Can I just say to him, in answer to that and to others, having someone who served in Northern Ireland, I have spoken to many veterans that I was there with and others that were there before. There is a scintilla of real question mark about how they will be treated. The vexatious nature of these complaints will, of course, drag them eventually back into the courts. That's the fear. They are sure that they are innocent, but by the time the courts have finished with them, innocent wouldn't matter at all because they'll have a destroyed life. Does he not agree with me?
I don't need to add a great deal because my right friend served on Operation Banner. He speaks with great authority. He has always been passionate on this issue, and I do think he hits the nail on the head. As so many people have said, so many veterans have said to me, it is the process itself which is so punishing with this lawfare. It is so damaging, it is not in national interest, and it will damage the British Armed Forces. And I'll give way to my honourable friend.
As my honourable friend knows, the then Defence Committee did 2 reports into this question. And in the course of those inquiries, we interviewed 4 eminent professors of law, including one particularly famous left-wing one. We didn't ask them what they wanted to happen. We asked them what could legally be done about a statute of limitation. And they all agreed, however reluctantly, that it would be legal to have a statute of limitation provided it was coupled with a truth recovery process which met the requirement for an investigation to occur, and that the other key condition was that it applied to all people involved in the conflict. Now, the government could pursue the line that these 4 professors of law took, but it doesn't want to do so, and it's happy to shelter behind court judgments that it could appeal but won't.
Well, it's an excellent point. My own friend's absolutely correct. Our Legacy Act was based on what happened in South Africa, Madam Speaker, which is where we may not like it, but if you want to have peace and reconciliation, any changes in the law which favour those who may have been guilty have to apply to both sides. It is simply a statement of fact. And I think I just showed with Loch Gall how our Act of Parliament, the Legacy Act, did indeed stop an inquest which would have been damaging to the armed forces, but which I do not believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, would have led to any actual prosecutions. So, turning to what wasn't in the King's speech, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Strategic Defence Review promised, and I quote, a new defence readiness bill to provide the government with powers in reserve to mobilise reserves and industry should crisis escalate into conflict. Now, with war on 2 fronts, surely such legislation should be the absolute top priority of this government. But alas, there is no defence readiness bill in the King's speech, and why not? Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, the defence readiness bill isn't ready. And what else is not ready, Madam Deputy Speaker? Of course, the Defence Investment Plan. And we know they're working flat out, Madam Deputy Speaker, and at pace. But almost a year ago, the Secretary of State promised from that dispatch box that the Defence Investment Plan would be published last autumn. It is now 10 months late. So when the Minister responds, can he tell us exactly when we are going to get the Defence Investment Plan? Most importantly, we are bound to ask, why do we still have no Defence Investment Plan? Now, of course, the DIP is meant to set out the detailed procurement decisions intended to implement Labour's Strategic Defence Review. So what do the authors of Labour's SDR, appointed by the Prime Minister, actually think about the failure to publish the DIP and the impact on delivering the SDR? Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, the 3 key authors, Dr Fiona Hill, General Sir Richard Barrons, Lord Robertson, every one of them has absolutely slammed the government for its failure to deliver, with Lord Robertson, a former Labour Defence Secretary, a former Secretary-General of NATO, stating, and I quote, we cannot defend Britain with an ever-expanding welfare budget. We agree 100%. The fact is, the current Prime Minister bottled it on welfare reform, U-turning repeatedly despite a majority of over 160, and failing to make even modest changes to working age benefits whilst removing the 2-child benefit cap. I give way to my honourable friend.
Grateful to him giving way. To be charitable to the government, maybe they are, given they had another U-turn on the Chagos deal, there is actually £34 billion that could be spent in defence. Maybe there's a delay in the plan because they're trying to decide how to spend that money, or is there another reason that you can think of?
Well, my honourable friend has remarkable foresight, because I will be coming to the Chagos issue. But this is the key point. Had the Prime Minister held his nerve and reformed the benefits system, including toughening rules for working age benefits and keeping the 2-child limit, as was his previous position, he could have found the billions to fund defence, rather than entrenching welfare dependency even further. So with this total failure of nerve from the Prime Minister, he had some brass neck using his response to the King's speech last Wednesday to accuse us of defence austerity. Just to remind the House, last year the government insisted on £2.6 billion of reductions to the Ministry of Defence budget. This year they are insisting on a further £3.5 billion of cuts. They'll say, but they were the last government to spend 2.5% on defence in 2010. Always omitting the caveat that when the same Labour government came to power in 1997, they inherited defence spending from us at 3%. Indeed, in talking about so-called austerity, they conveniently forget as well that the IFS found that had Labour won the election in 2010, they were planning to cut 25% from the defence budget. But at least their Chief Secretary to the Treasury at the time had the good grace to leave a note confessing, his message said, "We all know it, there's no money left." And once again relying on us to clear up the mess of a Labour government that had run out of other people's money, not for the first time in history. But the worst thing about Labour's resort to history is that it's completely irrelevant. I have repeatedly accepted that defence spending fell under successive governments since the end of the Cold War. Irrefutable. But that was because the world we lived in was one where we thought peace would last. Whereas today, the threat is completely transformed. And instead of looking back, the public want us to confront the challenges we face right now to be ready for battle. And above all, they want us to be honest about the choices needed to find the cash for defence. That's why we've started to set out a set of fully funded steps towards 3% of GDP on defence, as was last achieved under a Conservative government. So take Chagos, as my honourable friend said in a very good intervention. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, Labour may delude themselves that, like the parrot in Monty Python's sketch, their Chagos deal is merely resting, pining for the archipelago. But we know the deal is dead. It is an ex-treaty. And even if they disagree, with no treaty legislation in the King's Speech, it must be clear even to them that the hundreds of millions of pounds due to be sent to Mauritius this Parliament, primarily from the MOD budget, must now be available to be spent elsewhere. That's why earlier this month in Portsmouth, the Leader of the Opposition and I set out that we would use Labour's Chagos cash for a better purpose, accelerating the construction of the 13 frigates being made in Scotland that we ordered in government. The fact is, there is no other way to address the shortage of surface ships, very serious, in the short term than accelerating the build of those 13 fantastic new warships. Indeed, if you bear with me, just a few days after we set out our policy to do exactly that, lo and behold, HMS Iron Duke was withdrawn from service, confirming the urgent need to act on defence readiness and be willing to divert cash from elsewhere. I give way to the Honourable Lady.
Thank you. I thank the Right Honourable Member for taking an intervention. Would he agree with me that had his government not got rid of shipbuilding in my city and had put some plans into place, we may well have been able to continue to build ships in my city rather than decimate it and leave us with 3 incompetent ports of ministers?
Well, I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady, but I think she would be better focusing on the Type 45 destroyers. In government, they were meant to order 12 Type 45s. They slashed that order in half to just 6. And worse than that, in an act of genius, they inserted an engine that didn't even work, and we've had to spend years trying to replace through the PIP programme. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the issue of welfare and defence funding, we've been the first party to explicitly set out how we would reduce benefit expenditure to increase defence spending, with confirmation that we would restore the 2-child benefit cap and use the savings for our military. We've set out plans to move £2 billion a year from R&D from other government departments to fund drones and drone tech across the board. But if we are to become the world leader in uncrewed warfare that I still believe we can be, not least after our extraordinary support for Ukraine, we don't just need our services to have the cash to test and train, we also need to invest billions into transforming our defence industrial base. I'll give way to my friend who's an expert on the industrial base.
On the Type 26 global combat ship, and I welcome that, that's a really important, as I'm sure my right honourable friend will, important naval deal with Norway. Is it not the case the timeline of those delivery will give the first ships to Norway and not to the United Kingdom? If I'm wrong, great. And if that is the case, that there must be a discussion within the MOD about extending the life of the existing... Well, I'm great. If I'm wrong, great. Well, you know, I'm used to being wrong many times, but I'm happy to be wrong on something we need to get right. Thank you.
I'm grateful to my friend, and Madam Speaker, I'm aware that timelines are an issue in a couple of dimensions in this chamber at the moment, so I will come to my conclusion shortly. But to my honourable friend, he does make a fundamental question about the Royal Navy, Madam Deputy Speaker, at a time when we know we have shortages of surface ships. I do hope that the Minister will set out exactly how many Type 26s we are going to order, irrespective of the Norway deal. I support the Norway export deal. How many will we be ordering in addition to that? Because the written answer he gave me was very, very ambiguous indeed. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's to get that extra money into industrial base, which is why our alternative King's Speech has a sovereign defence fund bill. But there is, finally, one other important bill in our alternative King's Speech, our promise to repeal Labour's Terrible Troubles Bill. It is not enough to oppose Labour's lawfare. We would restore full legal protections for our veterans, boosting morale and sending a signal that we will always have the back of those who serve. Madam Deputy Speaker, the public know that it is madness at a time of war for the UK government to be prioritising putting our soldiers back in the dock for serving their country. That's why our motion today calls on this House to reject Labour's plans and scrap the Troubles Bill. We will always defend those who defended us.
The original question was that an humble address be presented to His Majesty as on the order paper. Since when Amendment O has been proposed as on the order paper, the question is that the amendment be made. I now call the Minister, Minister Luke Pollard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I know members across the House will join me.
Right, we're going to end this one here, okay? Thanks for joining. Don't forget to make sure you're subscribed and you got your notifications on. Tomorrow morning we will be doing Mayor of London question time with Sadiq Khan, and that is always a very interesting one. And thank you very much for everyone who watched and joined. It is much appreciated. But we're going to end this now. I will catch you tomorrow around 10:15 in the morning. We'll be live again. And if you're not there, then come back next week, 11:30, Wednesday, for more Prime Minister's question time. Whether Starmer is Prime Minister or not, well, we can't tell. Thank you all for watching. Much appreciated. And have a great rest of the day.